So welcome everyone. Thank you very much for joining. It's great to have you all here today. We're back for another FABRX webinar, and today we're looking into the future with our theme Beyond Compounding, the grand vision of personalized medicine powered by pharmaceutical 3D printing. We have two fantastic speakers joining us today, Dr. Sharon Flank from Infractrac in the US, and our own Professor Abdul Basit. And of course, Alvaro will be joining us again for the Q&A session at the end. First up, we have Sharon discussing the future of risk management and quality assurance for pharmaceutical 3D printing, followed by Abdul Basit looking into the far reaches of this exciting field. We will then have some time for the Q&A, so please do send your questions through the presentations, and we will try and get through as many as possible at the end. So first up, we've got Dr. Sharon Flank, Infractrac CEO. She is an innovator in additive manufacturing, including intellectual property, protection, quality management, dose innovation, and nanoprinting applications. She has a decade of experience creating AI solutions on the emerging technologies team at defense contractor SRA, now General Dynamics, followed by entrepreneurial experience in a fast-growing venture-backed company before founding Infractrac in 2006. Infractrac's focus is on light-based innovations with a specialty in pharmaceutical technologies. Dr. Flank holds 12 patents and has authored numerous journal articles, including publications on 3D drug printing, anti-counterfeiting, medication errors, artificial intelligence, and 3D printing for aerospace, as well as several unrelated fields. And she has contributed to emerging standards in additive manufacturing for ASTM and ANSI. She has received her AB from Cornell and her PhD from Harvard. So thank you very much, Sharon, for joining. It's great to have you here today. Please take the stage.
Thank you. So as we address the intersection of risk and quality management, there are lots of use cases for 3D drug printing. It is unlikely that we will be fast enough to supplant standard pharmaceutical manufacturing via tablet press and capsule filling, but there are things that this system can do that others cannot. In particular, the commercial product on the market in the US uses an orally disintegrating tablet. That is a method that is not otherwise, can I have that next slide, please? That is not otherwise possible to create using conventional technology. All right, clinical trial supply is at smaller scale, so those batches are an absolutely terrific application for 3D drug printing because the ability to switch dose sizes in a nimble way is a great advantage. Hospital and compounding pharmacy, sometimes referred to as specialty pharmacy, is generally per patient, so nobody's average. For geriatric and particularly for pediatric patients, the ability to create dose forms that are both sized for that patient and in a dose form that they can manage is really a key application, and that's what I'll be talking about mostly here. It is also possible to perform property enhancement. So there are things you can do with 3D drug printing to enhance solubility, bioavailability by, say, creating a different dose form, a sublingual film or a gummy or a buccal dose that enhance bioavailability. You can also use the geometry inherent in the 3D drug printing process to perform taste masking in a way that you can't with a compounded liquid. And all of those are innovations on top of the ability to create multiple drugs, a polypill in the same dose, and precision release control. All of those are innovations that we and other researchers around the world are at work on, and they interact with the ability to perform point of care compounding using this novel technology. It's scary. 3D drug printing is a new thing, and it enables a kind of distributed manufacturing that sends regulators into a panic. Oh no, there are a lot of new players. How do we de-risk? What do we allow? What do we control? But it's worth noting that compounding itself is already a distributed process. Next slide, please. And that means that we need to establish trust in a way that focuses really on the end product. So using a concept from the quality management around standard pharmaceutical manufacturing, we focus on the quality target product profile. You can't really do batch sampling in this case because the batches are small and you can't expect that the people at the point of care are going to do full assays. You also want to monitor the process by understanding what it is and what needs to be monitored. So essentially, much of the process is like using a pasta maker to make spaghetti. And so understanding how that process works and what can go wrong is critical. And on the next slide, you will see that in Infractrac's first hour of printing a couple of years ago, we kind of created spaghetti because we didn't correctly adjust the Z height. And so we printed too high and into the bed was too low. We printed into the air. And in the first few minutes of printing, we made some spaghetti. But we quickly corrected that to make nice little tablets. That helps us understand that 3D printing can go wrong in lots of ways. The protections themselves need to be cost effective, and that means they need to be fast. The methods need to be non-destructive, and it's best if they align with existing quality monitoring. The distributed manufacturing players are smaller, and their appetite for expensive protocols is going to be very limited. Next slide, please. In compounding, some of the ways that things can go wrong are pretty clear. You want to make sure that the process is sanitary. That means not just no dirt and no bugs and no rodents, but also that there's no API in there from a previous run. So cleanability in terms of single-use syringes and cleanable metal parts is absolutely crucial. You also want to make sure that the doses are not super potent, so that you need really reliable ways to assess the API in there. And then stability is crucial because you want either to dispense quickly to make sure that there's no decay or microbial growth, or create a test that generates the right parameters so that you can manage that stability. Next slide, please. In the US, compounding current best practices rely in part on recipes generated by the American Society of Health System Pharmacists. So that's essentially a set of recipes mostly for liquids compounded at the point of care. Those are akin to what will be pharma inks, so that the pharm techs, the pharmaceutical technicians who were doing that compounding, have fewer choices to make and therefore fewer chances for mistakes. There are extensive documentation requirements, which makes good sense. But the key quality control in the existing compounding system is a visual check by a supervising pharmacist. That is, the key check is eyeballs. Next slide, please. So I'm not expecting that you will be able to read this chart, but I do want you to make sure that you understand the 4 columns. So on the left, conventional manufacturing in the U.S. is regulated by FDA and follows GMP requirements and uses USP, U.S. Pharmacopoeia monographs. And then in the U.S., there is a kind of at-scale compounding called 503B, which you will have heard of in the context probably of GLP-1 manufacturing, where when there's a shortage, there can be outsourcing facilities that themselves make drugs at some scale. All the way on the right is the per-patient compounding in the US 503A. That's for a single patient with a prescription at the point of care. So that's traditional pharmacy compounding. And weirdly, that is regulated not by FDA, but by individual state boards of pharmacy. Next slide, please. And the key places where those focus, we're going to put point of care 3D printing in between the 503B at scale compounding and the 503A per patient compounding. And the places to focus are going to be stability and quality control, which on the next slide you will see in bigger print, first of all. Stability, first of all, I want you to pay attention. If you want to see more of this chart, you can look at it yourself at Ritchie and Flank, the citation on the bottom, in Pharmaceutical Technology. Stability is a trickier question when the preparation is wetter. So when you're printing, say, gels with a syringe, then those are going to be wetter. 503A wants you to dispense generally within the same day, depending on moisture content. Moisture content can be measured via spectroscopy, but generally either you have tablets that are dried or dispensed dry, or you have gummies or gels, and those, of course, should be dispensed promptly in order to avoid microbial growth. Quality control is really our focus here. Quality control at the point of care is facilitated by some work up front. So a company like Infractrac will use a predictive model that relies on near-infrared spectroscopy and chemometrics and is correlated in advance. So once that formulation is ready for 3D printing, the near-infrared spectroscopic model performs assays and aligns with content uniformity testing, percent water, dissolution tests per US Pharmacopoeia. And then you have a test that can be done at the printer, but that has already been modeled beforehand. Generally, we expect that the facility standards for 3D drug printing will end up with the state 503A standards and probably won't require GMP. Next slide, please. So really the upgrade here is the ability to do that quality work at line. Using a quality target product profile, in other words, what's the end drug supposed to be, that itself is correlated with the standards, including pharmacopoeia standards. Crucially, non-destructive because you really don't have samples to waste, and that relies on a predictive model in advance where all the work up front ends up with something that is easy enough for that target user, that pharmaceutical technician, to use. So weight, including potentially an incorporated balance, spectroscopy that answers the question with a yes, no, does it match the model? You can also incorporate with a camera an AI model that says, hey, is this print going okay or is it not? Next slide, please. So although all of that predictive modeling up front enables the technician to just do a yes, no check, I will let you peek behind the curtain at what we're doing in there. So these tests were done on differing levels of caffeine as the API. And once they're processed, you can see in the graph on the right, first I want you to notice the beautiful consistency. So the print variability is very low and those graphs all overlap just beautifully. That is, we are printing the same thing predictably over and over again, and that is good news. If you look at, say, 1470 nanometers and about 1650, you'll see that the graph separates out a bit. And what you're looking at there is, well, as you would expect, the caffeine level, different API concentrations are going to give you different points on that near-IR graph. Now, you may know that it's not a quantitative technique, but if you model in different concentrations into your near-IR model in advance, then you can see beautifully that the API levels are different. And if you think for a moment, you'll realize, oh, when the caffeine levels go up, the excipient levels are going to go down. So you'll expect that there'll be a second place on that graph where the curves will separate out. And that is precisely what you see here. Next slide, please. So they cluster just beautifully, and that establishes trust along the lines of the kinds of PAT, the kinds of process analytical technology that is part of the quality management for pharmaceutical manufacturing at scale. And that all up front allows immediate right drug, right dose confirmation right there in line. And when we showed this graph to the FDA Emerging Technologies team, they remarked that if we were trying to get a drug approved, this is exactly the kind of data that they love. Next slide, please. And not only can near-infrared spectroscopy in this predictive model predict moisture, API levels, excipient levels, but it even can predict porosity. So all of the assays that you would normally perform can be pretty much correlated with the point of care, instant, right drug, right dose, quick result that you can get from the near-infrared spectrometer in the printer. So API, excipient concentration, moisture, and also porosity. So physical properties can be modeled here as well. Next slide, please. So overall, this offers an upgrade in compounding that is a kind of quality monitoring for cost-effective risk control. The spectroscopy, near-infrared here, you can use Raman too. They're both good for drugs and polymers, incorporated sensors, a camera that can just tell you whether things are aligned, so that at line, even a technician can catch bad product before it's released to patients. Next slide, please. There are lots of exciting things happening in the research arena, and Infractrac is also at work on novel dose forms that can only be created via 3D printing, and those are not just multiple drugs and specific control of release and the two of them combined, doses aimed at dysphagia so that geriatric and pediatric patients don't have to worry about swallowing gummies, sublingual films, buccal films, lots of precision control, including via geometry for taste masking. All of that is proceeding apace, but this is ready for implementation right now. So this level of regulation to minimize risk at the point of care to improve per patient compounding with 3D drug printing uses the focus on that quality profile of what's being printed, leverages non-destructive techniques using predictive modeling up front so that it's easy for end user verification, and the result is that you have something that can be faster, cheaper, and safer, and that's available right now to serve patient needs better for customized dosing, because nobody's average, and personalized dosing is really better medicine. Next slide, please. If you want to find out more about Infractrac's innovations and our journey in 3D drug printing, you can see our videos on the Infractrac YouTube channel. I'll be happy to take questions at the end of this session, and now Anna will turn it over to Abdul. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sharon. That was a really fascinating presentation. And I have to say, I do like watching your videos online, so I do recommend a watch and logging in. So yeah, if you have any questions for Sharon, please do submit them and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. Next up, we've got Professor Abdul Basit. Professor Abdul Basit is a UCL academic, inventor, and serial entrepreneur. Abdul is a world-leading authority on oral drug delivery, microbiome medicine, additive manufacturing, and digital health. He has founded 4 biotech companies and invented a range of disruptive drug delivery technologies, many of which have been commercialized into new medications. His group also pioneered the field of pharmaceutical 3D printing and moved this transformative technology into hospitals, community pharmacies, and the pharmaceutical industry for real-world clinical impact. Over 1 million patients annually benefit from treatments developed by his research group. Abdul has received prestigious awards, including the 2022 Harrison Memorial Medal for outstanding achievements in the pharmaceutical sciences. He has supervised over 60 PhD students, trained numerous research fellows, and hosted many visiting scientists from across the world. He is the Deputy Editor-in-Chief of the International Journal of Pharmaceutics, and Abdul has attracted over 100 million in funding from external sources for his research and development activities. Since 2019, he has also been ranked amongst the world's most highly influential researchers by Clarivate. So we are very proud of at FABRX and FABRX AI to have Abdul as one of our co-founders and directors. So thank you very much, Abdul, for joining us today, and please take it away.
Right, thank you very much. That was great, Anna. Thank you. So it's a pleasure to be here. I'm following Sharon. Big footsteps to follow, so I'll do my best. I've got about 20 minutes to try and move these slides. Okay, I've got 20 minutes to try and give you the grand vision of personalized medicine powered by 3D printing. There'll be a bit of overlap with Sharon's talk, but also I'll give you a bit of a future look. If we start with what is vision, vision is effectively seeing the impossible. Once you've seen the impossible, you then work backwards to make it happen. Okay, you create a path to make the impossible possible. So I'll talk to you about things that are now possible and things that seem impossible, but I think are going to happen as we go through into the future, powered by 3D printing. And so if I start with a bit of an outline of the things I'm going to talk about, I'll take you back in time a little bit, talk about industrial revolutions, some of the 3D printing opportunities that we have with us today and what's going on in the future, where we are with clinical implementation of pharmaceutical 3D printing, and how we can use digital tools like AI and machine learning. They're not magic, they actually are tools to accelerate pharmaceutical 3D printing, make it faster to translate, and where we are beyond compounding, where we can use printing to reach hard to reach areas, including space. And I'll finish off with NASA coming to visit us, and that was very exciting last year, where they see opportunities for printing in space. So if I start a little bit and take you back in time, take you back to the first industrial revolution. This happened in Britain when Britain was called Great Britain. Everything happened here in this country. And that was about 1784, and steam and water was brought in to, steam trains. You could transport things around the country. You had tools where farmers could create their own food. So the world was becoming more industrialized, and that started in 1784. 1870, the world changed again dramatically with electricity coming in. And then we have mass-produced cars like Henry Ford's, Model T, Ford cars. 1969, the third industrial revolution, we have electronics, man on the moon, 1969. We're now in the fourth revolution. Some would say we're into the fifth industrial revolution, where things are digital. So the world around us has changed dramatically, but those of us in pharma, things haven't changed that much. And to kind of make that point, if I pick a date on this slide, so 1843, that was the date when the first patent was granted for compressing powder into tablets. That was 1843. That was by a gentleman called William Brockden. He was an all-round genius. He invented lots and lots of different things. He was unrelated to pharmacy, but he filed the very first patent of converting powders into tablets by compression. So he filed that patent in 1843. So that's kind of towards the end of the first industrial revolution. He died in 1854, and he is buried immediately behind where I work here at the School of Pharmacy, of all the places to be. So he's buried 100 meters in that direction behind me. That's where he's buried. And I wonder what he must think, looking up to the School of Pharmacy every single day. Almost 200 years later, people are still using tablets. Okay, so hopefully printing will start changing that. At least we're changing tablets to printlets. Okay, but I think that's incredible that he's buried just here. So if I can just, okay, so as I say, we're kind of in the fifth industrial revolution, where things are all digital. We have sort of robots running things now. I came back from China last year to see some of my PhD students, and I was taken aback by a lot of robots in their laboratories. We don't need humans anymore. Robots are doing the experiments, so worryingly, we'll be replaced perhaps at some point. So things are speeding up. A lot of the Amazon factories are in darkness. Robots can work in dark. Don't need a light. That saves money. But what I've got here at the top here, which I think is very important, obviously, is 3D printing, and that's what I'm going to talk about for the rest of this talk: three-dimensional printing. And as Sharon's explained, it's very simple. It's effectively taking a digital object, which you create on a computer, and turn that into a physical object, which you create using a robot or a printer. Okay, that's all it is. Create something on a computer and then print it using a printer. So what I like about 3D printing is that you're limited by your imagination. If you can think it, you can create it. So it's a wonderful place to be in science, and we have wonderful opportunities with this disruptive technology. Okay, and there are a variety of different technologies which fall under the umbrella of 3D printing. There are 7 different classifications. I'm not going to walk you through all of these different types, but if you just look at the extreme right-hand side, there's a concept called material extrusion. And most of the pharmaceutical technologies that are used in hospitals and community pharmacies tend to be based on this technology of material extrusion. We're extruding material through a nozzle. And you can either use fused deposition modeling, which is you're extruding a filament produced by hot metal extrusion through a nozzle. It's melted and deposited on a build plate. Semi-solid extrusion, SSE, where you're extruding kind of a paste or a gel. So that has the advantage of doing that at room temperature, lower temperatures. DPE is, rather than starting with a filament, you're starting with just powder, and you're melting that through a nozzle, so you can just produce materials in a much simpler method. So 3 kind of extrusion technologies that fall under material extrusion, and they're the ones that are commonly used. So this is just a quick overview of some of the opportunities that are out there. Sharon talked about some of these. So on the right-hand side, drug development. So a lot of people are now looking at putting printers in clinical trial units to fast-track first-time in human studies. You can change the dose on demand. You don't have to produce a batch of tablets with 6 months stability. You can print the tablet on the day of the study, and as you save time, you save money. So there are huge opportunities there. I'm not really going to talk about that so much. At the bottom, we'll touch on that a little bit later on. Hard to reach areas. You can put printers in disaster areas where you can print a medicine on demand for a particular instance. And also space, which I'll talk about right at the end of this talk, opportunities for printing medicines on demand for astronauts in space. Where most of the interest has been, back down on planet Earth, has been here on the left-hand side, sort of on-demand personalization. Because we're all so different. We all need different doses, different medicines. This slide hasn't come out too well here, but what this slide is trying to show you, that if you look at different disease states, the effectiveness of the medicines for these different disease states are quite low. Yeah. So if you look at Alzheimer's, these are commercial medicines on the market. So for Alzheimer's, the effectiveness rate is 30%. So if 10 patients take the same medicine, same dose, only 3 will get an effect. Yeah. Worse than that is oncology. That's down at 25%. So only a quarter of the patients will get an effect from a particular dose of medicine. That's the reality of medicine that are on the market, because we are all so different. We need things that are more personalized to us. And often you can improve this by just personalizing the dose, among other parameters. And to personalize the dose, what you need obviously are technologies that can do that. Unfortunately, we have printers that can now do that. And here at FABRX, we've developed the world's first 2 GMP printers for personalized medicines. The one on the left-hand side is the MediMaker 1, where you have 1 print head. So you can either use 1 nozzle using fused deposition modeling, direct powder extrusion, or semi-solid extrusion. The printer on the right is more versatile, where you have 3 different print heads. You can have the same print head, same technology for all 3, or you can have 3 different print heads with different technologies. This improves versatility, improves throughput. So you have opportunities there. Okay, and this is just to show you just visually what these things kind of look like. On the left-hand side is a hot metal extruded filament being pushed through a print head, and you're producing a tablet using fused deposition modeling. On the right-hand side is a semi-solid extrusion print head, which is just depositing paste or gel into capsules. So you have versatility depending on what the needs may be for the customers or the patients. Right. So those of you who think that this is still a bit far-fetched and still far into the future, and this is actually happening now. So these printers are actually in hospitals, in community pharmacies, and are printing for patients. So this is happening now. So on the left-hand side here is our first publication. This is the world's first study where a 3D printer was put into a hospital and medicines were printed in a personalized manner for rare disease patients, particularly children. That was done in 2018, 2019. That gave us a lot of confidence because the parents were very happy, the children were very happy, the pharmacists were very happy, and the clinicians were very happy. So that this seemed like a paradigm shift. There was an opportunity for printing medicines in hospitals for patients. And then last year, we published a study where this is the world's first study where two medicines were combined together into a 3D printed formulation, sort of a poly pill for patients, so it's more convenient for them to take. That study was done in Spain, the same hospital as the first one. So once again, the patients were happy with that. So, and on the extreme right is the world's first study where our 3D printer was put into a community pharmacy. This pharmacy was in Madrid, in Spain, and it was dispensing personalized doses of minoxidil for patients. And for those of you who may know, minoxidil is a treatment for hair loss. And I think I could benefit from that. I don't think I can volunteer for this. Probably the dose I would need for this study would be very high, I think, to see an effect in me. But it's happening. So just to make this point, printing is happening as we speak. And we have a lot of people interested in the technology around the world. We're very excited with the collaboration we have with Gustave Roussy Hospital in Paris. That's Europe's leading cancer hospital. They have two of our MediMaker 2 printers, and these printers are pretty much printing 24/7 for cancer patients. So these are sometimes taste-masked medications for acceptability purposes, specific doses for the patients, poly pills for the patients. So this is happening, and the patients are happy, the carers are happy, the pharmacists are happy, the clinicians are happy. So it's having a paradigm shift on, and how medicine is given to patients in a personalized manner. On the top left is other hospitals around the world where the printers are in place and studies are running. And we have sort of studies running all around the world and collaborations everywhere, which we're very excited about. So we do really see this taking over. We see huge opportunities here on planet Earth, so to speak. Okay. So when we have new PhD students who start on 3D printing, they start very excited. They think, oh, they're going to change the world. 3D printing is wonderful. 3D printing is, if you're new to it, people think it's you just turn up, press a button, and out comes your tablet. There's a lot of know-how associated with this technology. A lot of things go wrong. And we've got a lot of experience having worked in this space for about 14, 15 years now. So what we've tried to do to help the field is use AI and ML tools to get better predictability of which formulations will print, which helps newcomers to the field. So you don't want trial and error to make lots of mistakes. You want things to be printed pretty quickly. So to use one example here, this technology is used deposition modeling. There are a lot of variables involved in printing from this approach. You're starting with the drug and the excipients on the left-hand side, different loadings, different ratios. You then need to extrude that through a hot melt extruder. So, what temperature do you use? What extrusion speed do you use to print that, to create that filament? Does the filament have the right characteristics? Will that filament then be loaded into the printer? And will it print? And what about all these other parameters like printing temperature, travel speed, all of these variables? And at the end, do you get a printlet? So a lot of things can go wrong in this process. And we know, because we've experienced this over the years. So what we did, I'm very lucky. I work with brilliant PhD students, and we got our brilliant PhD students to look at the literature, extract data from published literature. We took data from our in-house database of a lot of formulations that we developed over the years. That's not in the public domain. And we had a database of 1,600 formulations. Some of those formulations printed, some of those did not print. And we took that, apply some algorithms to that to look for patterns in the data. So can we predict certain parameters using machine learning? Can we predict the filament characteristics, which temperature you use for the extrusion, and what temperature you use for the printing? So this was a long, tedious process, but we got there. And at the bottom here is the publication that came out of it. And to make it easier for people, we've created this web platform, Medicine. So it's free. Anyone can go there, input some information about your formulation, and it'll give you some outputs. It'll give you some predictions, where to start. So rather than starting with a blank piece of paper, you can start with some certain temperatures, certain printing parameters, which are more likely to work first time for you. So this will speed up your introduction to pharmaceutical 3D printing. So this platform is for fused deposition modeling, but that's also here on the extreme right-hand side, but we've also developed machine learning algorithms and predictions for inkjet printing, which is in the middle. That's been published, and also done this for selective laser sintering, which is a kind of a laser-based approach for producing tablets. So this is all in the public domain, and it's here to help people who are in 3D printing. Okay. So one thing is to predict the printability. The other thing that we're very interested in is, can we predict the dose that a patient would need? So not just the predictability of the tablet or the printlet, but what dose would the patient need to start with? So we've got a new platform called Dose Tailor, and we've looked at data in the public domain and applied machine learning models to predict the starting doses for this particular drug tacrolimus, which is a drug used for an organ transplantation, where often it's a lot of trial and error for patients. They're given a lot of different drug doses, blood tests are taken, doses are changed. It takes a long time to stabilize these patients. So we think we've got a platform that can kind of dose predict for this particular drug, which helps clinicians, get patients started pretty quickly. And we're looking to expand this to other drugs, and that's in the works at the moment. So we're excited to see, what other drugs we can get into this platform. The reason we're doing this is we want this to link to our sort of virtuous cycle. This is one of our grand visions, the grand vision of personalized medicine. So what does the patient need? What does the therapeutic need? What is the drug dose they need? Maybe that's based on a drug test, a blood test where you're measuring drug levels. Maybe that's based on this kind of machine learning algorithm to start the patient on a particular dose based on some parameters, their body weight, other parameters they may have. A digital prescription is then sent. That produces a design on a computer that is printed using the printer, and you get a personalized medicine given to the patient. And this is kind of a virtuous cycle that continues, and patient gets optimal therapy because the dose is changing potentially, on different days, and the printer can print a specific dose for that patient, what they need for that particular day. This optimizes therapy for patients. So we're very excited, and that's one of our visions, and we're implementing that in hospitals. But what's on the horizon? What's this future look? So any of you who are Star Trek fans would have seen this. This is the replicator from Star Trek, where, the captain of the Enterprise would go, or Captain Janeway from Voyager would go and ask for a particular, food or drink, and this is just a glass of water being produced, in front of your eyes very, very quickly. And there is a technology now that can do this, and that technology is called volumetric 3D printing. We saw a paper in Nature a few years ago, and we thought that seems very cool. And we basically made our own technology, our own system, cobbled together from different parts to create our own volumetric in-house printer. And the principles here are that rather than producing an object by layer, you're producing instantaneously. Yeah, you're shining light from multiple angles, which hits a polymer resin, and that resin solidifies under that light. And what we've got here is an example of paracetamol, just as a model drug, loaded in a liquid resin. And on the left-hand side is the side view of a tank containing that paracetamol resin. On the right-hand side is from above. You're looking down into the tank. And what you're going to see happen is the light's going to be shone onto this object. And after 7 seconds, a torus-shaped tablet is going to be produced. It's going to appear just in front of your eyes. So let me run this. So the light is being shone, and you can kind of see this torus shape starting to form. And after 7 seconds, on the right-hand side, you can see it clearly. It's there. It's like a polo mint or a donut. And the left-hand side, you can see it from the side view. So very fast, rapid formation of a 3D printed object. Okay. This is not quite ready for clinical translation yet. There are some issues that need to be resolved, but it's just to make the point that technology is moving very, very quickly in this space of pharmaceutical 3D printing. And where this kind of technology could go, as could other technologies, is beyond Earth, space. Okay, so there's a lot of interest now in space medication, space medicines. It's just not Hollywood making money from space movies. There's a company called VARDA Space Industries making money from manufacturing drugs in space, because under zero gravity, you can form structures that are unique. There's no gravity, so you can form crystal structures which are unique in space, and they keep their form and they can be brought back to Earth with better dissolution and bioavailability. People are 3D printing organs on the International Space Station because of the different conditions that are there. And we have a vision that you can, print in space. You can't take the pharmacy with you to Mars or the moon. So you need a technology that can print on demand for the needs of astronauts. And that's our vision at the bottom of this slide. We think that you can do that. A printer can do that, print on demand for what is needed. And we put this together into this kind of commentary review article a few years ago. My only contribution to this really was the title. My brilliant colleagues, PhD students, and Alvaro did all the work with the real vision. And this what was interesting, this paper got rejected by a few journals as being, what's the point of this? This is pointless. This doesn't make any sense. And what you realize in life as you get older is that everyone's entitled to their opinion, but you're entitled to ignore it. And so we found a journal, International Journal of Pharmaceutics, which published this paper. I did say to the editor of the journal that maybe we should change the title to Intergalactic Journal of Pharmaceutics to be more appropriate, but he didn't agree with that. But it was published, and what was amazing, this was picked up by NASA, of all people. So NASA saw this particular review article, read a lot of our other 3D printing articles, and came to visit us last summer. So July last year, two gentlemen from NASA came to visit our printing facility here at the School of Pharmacy and also visit FABRX. So on the photograph on the left-hand side there, you'll see a gentleman in blue shirt. That's Dr. Neil Zapp from NASA. And the person to the left is Dr. J.D. Polk. He's NASA's Chief Health and Medical Officer. So they believe in 3D printing in space. And it was great for them to come, see what we were doing, meet the students. And for the students, it was the greatest day of their lives to meet these two gentlemen. I can tell you that. On the top right is Dr. Polk looking at one of our MediMaker 1s. And on the bottom right there is Dr. Polk giving a lecture to all the students about mission to Mars. So that was the most exciting lecture I've attended and the most exciting lecture the students have attended. So great experience, wonderful opportunities, and discussions are taking place with NASA. And a couple of months later, Anna, who's chairing this session, and Alvaro, who's on this Q&A session afterwards, were then invited by Dr. Polk, who's next to Anna there, and Neil there, next to J.D. Polk, to visit Cape Canaveral in Florida and to start discussions about putting printers in space. So this is amazing, absolutely amazing. So just shows you what can happen. We started this printing process about 12 years ago, and shows that what can happen, as you move through with time. So just to wrap it all up, bring you back to this slide. Hopefully what I've shown you is, 3D printing is a disruptive technology. The opportunities are boundless. We're only scratching the surface of what we can do with this technology. So it's replacing compounding. It's in clinicals. It's in hospitals, in community pharmacies. It's being used in clinical trials. It's being put into first in human studies. And we're talking about space opportunities as well. So I can't think of many technologies out there that have, such unique applications across a wide variety of areas. So we're very excited. And just to bring it all together and finalize for you, I am very, very lucky. I always say to people, I have the best job in the world. That's because I get to work with a lot of very bright, a lot of brilliant young people. So here's some photographs of my PhD students who do all the hard work. I'm very lucky because they come and do their PhDs, and they don't come just do a PhD. They come to want to change the world. And when you get to work with people like that every day, you're not doing a job, you're doing a hobby, and you can really impact people's lives. So I'm very, very lucky. And I get to work with bright people at FABRX as well, who are really disrupting the pharma space. So I'm very lucky. So thank you very much. I'm happy to answer questions along with Sharon after this talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abdul. That was really exciting to hear from you. And you're right, visiting NASA was very exciting, and it's great to be discussing this with them. So if you have any questions for Abdul, please do put it into the chat, and we'll go through as many as we can now. We've got just over 10 minutes to go through questions. We've got a handful that was submitted online as well, so we can get started. So the first question is for Abdul. Which printing technology is likely to be used in space for pharmaceutics?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we had those conversations because obviously there's issues. Some of the technologies out there use powders. So you can put powders into printers or whatever, but you don't want powders floating around in space, in the National Space Station or spaceships. That's the worst thing you'd want. So one of the opportunities we think would be the semi-solid extrusion type approach, where everything's pre-packaged in a syringe. It's controlled, you know what it is, and then that's put into the printer and printed, on demand when is needed. Alternatively, you could have a filament that's pre-prepared, packaged, and then loaded in using fused deposition modeling. So I envisage those two kind of for pharma, but I think for the fast prototyping and where you could possibly not just for medicines where you could produce spare parts a little bit, the volumetric has opportunities where you can do that very fast printing technology. You can not just print medicines, but you could print, bits and pieces for the space station. If you need to make repairs, a new nut, a new bolt, you can use that technology to produce that bolt. You don't want the space station falling apart.
Thank you very much. So the next question is for Sharon. Do you foresee the FDA getting involved in the future, or will 3D printing stay on a USP federal level?
Well, so FDA has done a good job of paying attention, and the big use of 3D printing in US hospitals is first for surgical models, and much of the regulation from an FDA standpoint is similar except for the materials part. So all of the procedures and cleanability and all of the facility and hardware and software requirements are going to be the same. So I think FDA, being regulated by FDA rather than 51 separate states and the District of Columbia, is a heck of a lot easier. So we are all pushing to have some kind of general vision from FDA that saves us from having to do this all one at a time. USP is moving forward actively. They believe that this is very much the future and they want to be part of it. So I think together those will all nudge FDA in the right direction. And also, if we move in first through 503A per patient compounding, this 3D printing at the point of care is a better, more predictable solution than what's out there now. So the effect on FDA is, let that happen first and then watch how it goes and get involved.
Thank you, Sharon. I'll just add to that as well. A few weeks ago, we were able to install one of the printers at the USP. So it is very exciting that they are getting involved now. Alvaro, the next question is for you. Is the Medimaker okay for making gummies? And what other type of medications can you print?
Yeah, so the Medimaker is very versatile. It's based on material extrusion technology, but inside material extrusion technology, as Abdul and Sharon mentioned, we have direct powder extrusion. The starting material is a powder. We have FDM, fused deposition modeling. The starting material is a filament, and semi-solid extrusion, where the starting material is a gel or a semi-solid extrusion, semi-solid material. So yeah, it's possible to use semi-solid extrusion to make chewable tablets. Actually, it was the first study that we did in a hospital that Abdul mentioned was to make chewable tablets. It's possible to make suppositories, films, bucco-dispersible or dispersible tablets, conventional tablets. It's possible. It's very versatile.
Thank you very much. Abdul, another space-related question for you. Which drugs would be interesting to print on the moon?
So that was also a conversation we kind of had, because there are two challenges. One is, you can't take the whole pharmacy with you, so you can't take every single medicine with you, and we need to work on producing drug substance in situ. So, to produce drug substances and then combine that with printing to print the drug product. But what has been interesting from talking to NASA is that there are certain drugs, for example, antibiotics. There are many different antibiotics that are out there, and astronauts get infections. But you can't take all 80 antibiotics with you, So what you tend to find is one universal antibiotic. It's maybe not the first choice for every single infection, maybe the second or third choice, but it's broad spectrum. It'll treat your sore throat, it'll treat whatever. And one of the drugs they mentioned was like ciprofloxacin as a classic antibiotic would be the number one choice antibiotic, which would be universal. So you've got a stock of ciprofloxacin. You could then 3D print the personalized dose, for the astronaut based on that particular infection and the duration of that treatment. So the starting points would be that kind of way, specific drugs where there's a need, where there's going to be problems, and the astronauts suffer from sleep deprivation. So there's motility, disorder, gut disorders. So they always want sleeping medication to sleep, disorientated motility. So there are classic medicines that they're interested in, but it's still a work in progress to discuss exactly what the key ones are.
Thank you very much. Next one's for you, Sharon. Are you incorporating AI into your quality control research?
Well, first of all, predictive modeling relies to some extent already on AI. So in addition to the printability questions, the question of, is this thing that has been printed done the right way, is really already relying on existing kinds of AI. There are also ways to harness other formulation data, not just from experiments in 3D printing, but from the whole science, the whole pharmaceutical science of formulation, and bring those to bear. So all of those are within our current work and our plans, because Abdul's right that there's so much possibility here and so much to be printed, and if we can just narrow down to what's going to work and what does a good job for this patient, then those are all within the ways to use this to harness this technology to improve patient care.
Thank you. Alvaro, is 3D printing technology also applicable in the field of continuous batch manufacturing?
Potentially, yes. It's something that is not done right now, I think, but it was our original first approach, because for some technologies like FDM, you have a filament and you can have a continuous filament, and this filament could go inside the print head, and you could print in a movable base like a conveyor belt or something like that, and you print medicines, and the medicines are moving to the other side. So potentially, yes, but I don't think it's the aim, because I think the strength of 3D printing is personalization. So no one is working very hard on doing that. Although we cannot consider 3D printing like the traditional batch manufacturing technology. So it's more similar to continuous. So yeah, I would say yes.
Thank you. The next question is also for you. So hello, I am planning on buying a 3D printer for research purposes. Do you recommend the MediMaker 1 or the MediMaker 2?
Well, it depends on the needs. MediMaker 1 has one print head. It's more focused for pharmacies and hospital. The budget required is smaller, but if you want to do crazy things like drug combinations or developing crazy structures like one drug inside another drug, you need multiple print heads. So MediMaker 1 can be used for research as well, but depending on the budget, could be MediMaker 2. I think Sharon has the MediMaker 2 because it's doing many different things, and the possibilities are bigger with the MediMaker 2. But yeah, both can work. And if we are thinking about clinical implementation, so doing research but in a hospital or in a pharmacy, both are perfectly suitable for that.
Let me confirm that the MediMaker 2 supports all sorts of crazy questions in research, and we are combining methods and thinking about printing biopharmaceuticals and the kind of wide open, you can do anything that you can think up, is easier to implement on the MediMaker 2.
Thank you, Sharon. The next question is for you as well, actually. US insurance companies, do you foresee any issues regarding that?
So current reimbursement for 503A compounding is pretty much at the discretion of the insurer, and most of them cover it just fine when the medication is dispensed in hospital. it's when you give patients doses to take home that the insurers get a little trickier about it. So really, we are not changing anything about the insurability question at this point, because all we're doing is as with the introduction of robots for sterile compounding, we're just making a cleaner, faster, safer, more predictable version of per patient compounding. So yes, insurance questions loom large, but the place where we are sliding this in doesn't make the situation any worse.
Thank you. The next question for you, Alvaro. Can pharmaceutical 3D printing be used to prepare implant rings, like for vaginal infections, polymers like PLA, PCL, PLCL, for example?
Yeah, it can be used to print those type of materials, and it's possible. It's done. There are several projects of printing implantable devices, different type of devices, vaginal rings, even under the skin, or for slow release of medication during a month or things like that. So it's possible, and you can create many different structures. That's possible.
Thank you. And can you print natural product compounds as well?
Yeah, as well. You can use, normally we recommend to use pharmaceutical excipients because are approved pharmaceutical grade excipients, but you can print any type of material that is able to extrude and has the right characteristics. Yeah, we were printing, yeah, many different type of materials from different origin.
Thank you very much. Now we've only got time for one more question now. So Alvaro, you will end it. How long does it take to print a tablet or capsule?
So it depends on the complexity and it depends on the technology. At the beginning, if you asked me this question 5 years ago, I would say that it takes like 3 minutes. Now that everything goes much faster, layer by layer, we can make 3D printed tablets. I would say 30 or 50 tablets in 10 minutes or 8 minutes. If we are doing what we can see in the video, that is having a blister and filling the blister, that's much, much faster. We could have a debate if it's 3D printing or not, because we use the shape of a mold. But in that case, using the shape of a mold or filling capsules, it takes like 2 seconds. We did a study where in one day, one person working was able to print 10,000 units in one day. So the production is much higher.
Thank you very much. So that's all we have time for tonight. Thank you again to our panelists, and thank you to our audience for joining us. We've had a wonderful turnout, so it's great. It's a great end to the year. Please keep an eye out for our next webinar in the new year in January. But for now, have a lovely Christmas and a happy new year. Thank you very much for joining.